and other foul language, please no foul language. To the end, we will have a Q&A session. So we're going to go very quickly through what we'll cover this evening. This is a hugely broad topic, and you could go on for several hours, but we'll try to keep it short. We're going to introduce ourselves more thoroughly than we have, because we haven't introduced ourselves at all. The pros and cons of vending at cons, attitudes, pride, and other folly, the muse versus the marketer, a very important one. What's in a name? You need a little bit of dough before you can make some bread, our financial section, very important to vending. What does vendor staff look for in a vendor? So, I've decided to vend, and I've been accepted. What do I do now? And finally, our Q&A session at the very end. So, who we are. Well, obviously, we are cosplaying as several in-the-know and ponies you need to know. But we are me, Ori White Deer. I am an art vendor, a colored pencil traditional artist, and one half of Hearts and Hooves.
Also, she's hotty-toddy tonight.
I am hotty-toddy tonight. I am not Mayor.
Wow.
Those allegations are false and vicious.
As for myself, you should already know who I am, because I have a very important point you to know. I'm photo finished tonight, but you may call me by my common name, Matthew Luthi. You can also know me as Enigmatic Ink, and I'm a traditional artist and the other half of Hearts and Hooves.
Okay, we'll keep going this way.
My name is John Rhodes. I'm the Deputy of Vendor Relations for the Vendor Hall.
All right. Right now, I am currently decked out in a jet set ensemble, but in other circles, I'm also known as Cat, Swift Cat. Or you could call me Andrew if you want. I've helped before on many occasions of a smaller local convention in D.C., also known as Cloudsdale Congress, and I've done I had a little hand with the Big Apple BronyCon vending as well. And I'm here tonight to provide some of that expertise on what vendors are looking for. Beside me, you'll find my lovely wife, Upper Crust.
And tonight, I am the accountant, and I will talk to you about our lovely friend, money, and the main reason why we're all wanting to vend.
Cheers.
All right, well, we'll start with a few pros and cons, which also got, oh, good, you can actually see that. Wonderful.
Excellent.
So we'll go through a few points. Obviously, you're all very intelligent folks for just showing up to this wonderful event. You can read, so we'll just go through the most important stuff. Basically, when you vend at a convention, it is work. So quite often, you will not be able to actually enjoy the convention to its fullest. Or you might have to have some help in order to wait 3 hours to get an autograph from your favorite voice actor, as we found out today. Mm-hmm. If you're very new, if you've never vended before, and you're an artist or an artisan, said artist, you say?
Productist.
Exactly, productist. That's good.
Quiet,
Yes.
you.
Exactly. Product construction engineer. So you put a lot of time, effort, and heart and soul into your creations. And if you do well, you can get a great sense of validation and accomplishment. But if you don't do so well, it can actually affect you quite negatively. And sometimes you're not quite prepared for that. You're not quite prepared for people saying cruel things about your product. We'll get into that a little bit later. Another great thing about being a first-time vendor is it does give you some much-needed exposure. However, as we will get into, you could also be thoroughly ignored, which is no fun. Any other?
I would say that the vending experience has a lot to do with how good you are at dealing with people. As you all know, there are thousands of people who have come to this convention alone, and you're going to be seeing a lot of them in the vendor hall. And some of them you may be able to strike up a conversation with and really get to know, and others may simply pass you by or dismiss you. And so you'll be seeing a lot of both sides of that during your time vending. So you have to be able to, really, be glad for the positive experiences that you get with people, and be able to shrug off the negative ones and move on, because you're always dealing with the next person who comes along.
Okay, let's move on. Next. Attitudes, pride, and other folly. I have said a few of these myself, so I know from experience that you shouldn't really think this way. The first one being, my product sells itself. Everyone will love my product. Gimmicks are for bad products. I don't need those. And vending will give me validation as an artisan. My product sells itself. No, it really doesn't, and here's why. This is your product alone in the vendor hall. As you can see, this is the only thing anyone is looking at right now. There are no other vendors, all the tables are empty, and you are the only show in town. Great. Then your product would obviously sell itself. But now let's take a look at your product next to someone else's. I will do this in my best voice. Oh my God, it's my favorite artist, my favorite musician, amazing customs, plushies, plushies, and more plushies, all of the favorite things, right next to your product. So if you are a first-time vendor, or if you've never, if you've vended only a couple of times before, and you're not really a big name, guess who's going to scoot right past your table into whatever it is that's next door? And now this is your product with 149 other vendor products. You are here.
Personally, I think the decision to model the vendor hall in Legos this year was questionable, but I can roll with it.
Well, it's certainly better than Tetris. I mean, oof.
I like
So
the postmodern
gaudy.
style. I don't know about you guys.
Actually,
I mean,
that's
I
my
love
job.
it too.
That's your job.
I'm Tetris player.
Okay, everyone will love my product. So this is a little reenactment of something that actually happened to me personally last year. I'm not sure if you can read that, but essentially a nice little young lady wanted to buy one of my art prints, and her mom goes, "Oh, sweetie, you don't need that. You can draw better than that." To my face. So when I say you need to be able to deal with negative comments, I mean, honestly, we've all been there. We have a mom, and the mom doesn't want to spend money on every little thing, and they'll say things like that without thinking of what it actually does, how it actually may affect the person, because they're quite frankly used to going to Walmart to buy things, and they don't realize all the time that you've put some effort into this and are putting your soul to bear, as it were. So to say that everyone will love my product and to go in thinking that way, you're going to set yourself up for failure.
I think that the most important thing is to check your pride at the door. However, maintain enough confidence and love for yourself that you could overcome something like this.
Gimmicks are for bad products. We don't need them. Need we remind you the Lego Tetris situation you may find yourself in this vendor hall? You need to get attention somehow. You need to stand out from the 149. I use that number because that, I believe, was the number from last year. I think there might be more vendors this year.
This year we had 218 separate vendors,
So this is a little outdated number, but you get the point.
and there were 266 booth spaces in the vendor hall.
Quite a bit of competition.
And I had to play Tetris putting everybody around.
That too. So
Very good.
a couple of examples, a couple of very good examples are the booth Hey Look a Sign actually holds up a sign, or in this case, tapes it to his head, and people will walk by and go, "Hey look, a sign," and actually stop in. And then you've got these weird people, I don't know who that cosplayer is, so garish. Ugh. This person was singing at people last year, can you believe it? whatever, it got the job done apparently because it brought people to her table that otherwise might have just passed it by. So you don't always have to do something theatrical or elaborate because you might be next to a noisy booth that has, the musician booth that will have music going. You can do more passive things. I believe this year a certain table in the vendor hall whose name isn't slathered all over this presentation or anything is giving away free hugs. So, food for thought.
Another thing is, it's not a gimmick, but eye contact. The goal is, with these gimmicks, is to draw people to your table. And as a customer, I know that it's a personal choice of mine that if the artist is looking down at their phone constantly, not being engaged with people who may be walking by, eye contact is key. You could have the best art in the hallway, or in the vendor hall, and I will walk right past you if you are ignoring me. So just be engaged, get those customers in with your beautiful, charming eyes. Just even say hi. They could be thinking of a million other things, like that panel they need to get to about vending, or the autograph that they need to get in line for. If they're looks like their head's in the clouds, just saying, hi, how are you? They could snap back to reality. Oh, there's an artist table right here. And oh, you have some things I may be interested in buying. So just be engaged.
Grab them. Just
Yes.
take them by the hands and pull them in.
And there is some degree of multitasking that needs to happen. If, say, you're working on a custom figure for someone at the time, or you've got a drawing commission of some kind and someone walks by your table, just peek your head up and say, can I help you? Or if you have a question, please let me know. And you have engaged that person.
And if you yourself are otherwise indisposed, that's when you get the people who are hopefully helping you out to perform that duty for you.
Very important.
And really, don't be shy. Even as the saying goes, bad press is good press. If you think something feels too foolhardy or something might be garish, try it out anyway. Maybe somebody doesn't cling to it, but they start talking about it with their friends, and their friends might enjoy it enough to come over and take a look themselves. The word will spread. You just got to make sure you put yourself out there. That's really the key.
All right, and I
Don't
believe
be afraid.
our last point of folly will be vending will give me validation. This is probably, if anything, we hammer anything home to you tonight, it's you cannot base your artistic merits on how much or little you sell. Vending is not about proving yourself as an artist or a craftsperson. It is about making money. And if you go in it solely with the mindset that you are there to prove yourself as the best artist or even as a mediocre artist, you're setting yourself up for some real emotional heartache. There's a lot that goes into vending that has nothing to do with your artistic skill or your products even. You're competing with name brand people and you're a new brand. You can have some advantages, but if people go there and they see, oh my goodness, We Love Fine or other big names, they're gonna go straight to those major booths first and scoot right past you. So that's a challenge that you might have. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You could make something that someone might believe is beautiful or terrible. You can't let those negative reactions get you down. Your subject matter choices from what you choose to do and what others might wish to purchase are completely different. And one of the biggest disconnects is what you think your product is worth versus what others think your product is worth. Because, quite frankly, people don't care about how much effort you put into it. They don't care about how long you spent on it. They care about the final product that they want to give you money for and take home. And that's sometimes very hard to swallow, but it's the truth. Art is subjective, and so is the wallet. It's really what it comes down to.
Definitely back to, being an accountant. When it comes to money, you don't really think about the person's time and how much, and we'll talk about the role of your time and how much your product might be worth or not. But yeah, just like I said again earlier, love yourself. That's what, to keep yourself strong.
All right, our next section is the muse versus the marketer. Would you like to reenact this beautiful slide?
I would love to. This plush was stitched in the traditional royal canterlot fashion.
That's nice, but Baltimoreans wouldn't buy that in 1,000 years.
I wouldn't pay 9 bits for that.
Exactly. Next slide, please.
All right, so what we have next are
Next.
balancing your muse versus your metrics. And so, to run through a few of these, the most basic thing you're going to run into is that your muse wants to create what you want to see. It's something where you don't really want to sit down and really get into something that you yourself wouldn't want to, pretty much accomplish at the end of the day. If it's whether it has to do with subject matter, medium, or just simply the time involved. And so your inner marketer, on the other hand,
Your inner marketer wants to create what will sell. It really doesn't care what you like. It doesn't care if you think Big Mac is best pony and you want to draw him all the time. He is best pony.
We have one fan.
We have one. We have one and a couple enlightened souls in the audience. But you know, if the majority of people want Derpy cuddling a muffin, well then you need to be drawing 800 Derpies cuddling muffins. It's a sad reality of things.
and another point your muse will influence you on is that you want to push yourself artistically. I know that when I'm thinking about what I want to draw, I think back to what I've done recently and say, oh, okay, well, I did single subject portraits, 3 times in the last week. Let's move on to something else. How about, oh yeah, why don't I try ponies and cubism? I think that'll really go over.
Meanwhile, your inner marketer is about to smack you with a fan because, once again, your inner marketer wants to create what will sell. It wants to create all the time, not just when you feel inspired to do something interesting. You need to be making as much as you possibly can to prepare to sell as much as you possibly can.
And finally, your inner muse wants to create work that you yourself can be proud of. Because I know we all each have our own certain creative standards that we go by. And so we don't want to necessarily put ourselves in a situation where we feel like we're doing something that is beneath us or something that isn't really worth our time or our attention.
And your inner marketer wants to do it for the fame, baby. While you don't want to validate yourself, it's always nice to be recognized for your work. It's always nice to get that profit, to get that initiative, if you will. So your inner marketer wants to make money, period. Oh yes, another one of these delightful slides. This is our what's in a name slide. Basically, names are important. They're what you're on your business card, which you should have. Please have business cards.
I collect business cards.
Get
and
one of these. Keep them with you at all times.
What you don't know,
Might as well graze right past you if you don't.
at home, I have a boa made out of business cards, not just Benjamins.
So you should pick a name that is simple and catchy, something that's going to stick in people's ears and stay there. You want to get people's attention. You don't want to take something that's, going to slip right out of their ears. Use alliteration, puns, rhyme, anything to get the job done. We've got some good examples for you. The first of which we're not in the least bit biased towards.
No.
Not at all. None. Hearts and Hooves. It uses alliteration, pun because of the episode of My Little Pony, Hearts and Hooves, and we're deer people, so heart with an H-A-R-T. It's short and sweet. Another good example, going back to our good buddy at Hey Look a Sign. Hey, look a sign. It's funny, it's eye-catching, and it's good marketing technique. And a third example is Sapphire Stitches. It's alliteration, short and sweet. It utilizes the person's name, and it also gives you a little bit of a clue, but not too much, as to what that person sells. Stitches I'm kind of hoping they don't sell beatings, but, you know, you get the idea that, oh, it must be something that is sewn. All right, so now I'm going to hand you all over to the very, very capable hooves of Miss Upper Crust for Eye Financial section.
Don't mind if I do, darling. Okay,
Take it
everybody.
away, sweetie.
Let's talk about what we're all really here for. Money. All right, so let's talk profit. Your goal as a vendor is to make money. It's to make a profit. So saying that you earned $400 or earned $400 in profit is two very different things. And so what we're going to try to drive home is that just because you receive $500 or $700 in cash over the table or under the table, I don't know what you guys do, but that doesn't mean that you made $700 in profit. Next. Okay, so in order to determine what your profit is, you have to know how much you spent in order to get to your vending table. So what goes into your costs to vend? Well, practically all the things. First off, your vendor table is gonna go in there. Your con badge, the cost of your business cards. Please have business cards. I'm serious, this is really important, guys. So being at a convention, there are so many things that people are running to and from. They have lines to get into, all kinds of events to go to. They may love what you have, but they don't have the time to actually look at it. So if you have a business card, they can grab it, come back to you. If it's the last day and they didn't find your table until the hall is about to close and they want to visit your website and talk to you and get something from you later, that business card is your saving grace. Moving on.
She gets rather emotional about these things.
All right. The cost of your printing services for those lovely prints, your material costs for the fabric and the paints and the thread, gas, the cost of your gas. And this is a very specific and interesting story. There was a vendor who was selling these very lovely bracelets, not this one. And these beads were beautiful, and I said, these beads are so beautiful. And the guy that was selling said, I hope so. She drove 140 miles to this very specific bead store to get these very specific beads. And then I, as an accountant, immediately said, I hope she accounted for the cost of gas it took to get there into the cost of these bracelets. And apparently that guy he wasn't the artisan, but he said he was her accountant, and he said, yes, we made sure to account for that. So your gas goes into the costs of vending. Your advertising costs, if you made banners with markers saying free hugs, that counts. And even your hotel and airfare. I say that these count towards your vending costs. Others may disagree. If you're going to the convention only to vend, if you would not be going to that convention otherwise, then you should count those towards your business costs. But if you were gonna go anyways, then maybe you could let it slide. It's not like you're gonna get audited. All right. What costs do not go into vending? The value of my time? Unfortunately, even though time is money or candy or whatever, you are not paying yourself a salary, so your time, the cost of your time does not go into the cost of your product. Your salary is your profit. That's what it boils down to. The value of your helper's time. If you had someone helping you sew plushies or make a bunch of buttons or et cetera, the cost of their time does not go into your product unless you are actually paying for their effort.
As my mother gives me a very dirty look. Hi, Mom.
Here, I'll pay you later. Oh, all right, and then the last cost that does not go into your inventory this year is last con's inventory. You already accounted for that stuff. So it's basically free money if you sell something that was old product. It's just free profit. All right. So I listed off a lot of stuff that makes vending sound very expensive. And How do we reduce those costs? Well, there are several ways. First, it is very important to reduce your costs as best as possible, because when you reduce your costs, you increase your profit. So, to reduce your hotel costs, room with friends, or only vend at cons that are in local areas that you can drive to, or know someone that lives around town. I was just talking to a fellow that said that he was local and just hopped on the light rail to get here. Have a panel. If it's BronyCon, your badge is free. So that'll reduce that cost. Shop for your supplies on sale. Don't ever buy anything full price. And also, the internet. Sometimes the internet can score you some better deals than if you actually went into Michael's. Target just told me that their online prices are cheaper than their in-store prices. Yeah, so, all right. Get your printing services in bulk if your specific print shop has some kind of deal. Share a table. If you're sharing a table, how much is the table cost?
I believe the table costs vary this year.
Okay.
They started at 200. Oh, actually, they started at 95 if you took a half a booth. 200 to begin, and they went up as high as $895.
All right, so
That's for the primo spaces.
How many people have actually been down to the vendor hall today? Did you guys see did you see the big intersection with the big names? They all paid over $2,000 for that intersection. Okay? You seen who's in those intersections? The ones that can afford it. That's one of those big major costs.
And that's where sharing a table can help, because if the costs start at 200 and there's two of you, then it's only down to 100. So
I know I typically always notice 2 artists per table. I hardly ever see one artist with their own table, unless they're really rolling it in. Let's see, we're at, last but not least, use your frequent flyer miles if you have them. Most credit cards nowadays have some kind of point or reward system, so if you have to fly out of town for this convention that you're vending at, use those points or miles or what have you. Next slide, okay. All right, breaking even. So I told you that your objective as a vendor is to earn a profit. Well, your first goal is to break even. So you have to tally up all those costs to know how much you need to at least walk away without a loss, so that you've made everything back. So if all those things I listed off equaled $350, although now that I know what the vendor table costs, it's gonna be much more than that. $550, if your costs are $550, you need to at least walk away with having received $550 in cash over the table to not have a loss. All right, so now we've talked about the boring cost stuff. This is all pretty boring. I love money and numbers. I'm sorry if you guys don't. But anyway, so you want to price your merchandise for maximum profit. You have to figure out what is going to be your biggest seller, your cash cow. You may sell the most in buttons, but that is not going to bring in all the money. What's going to bring in all the money could be your jewelry or your prints or plushies, probably plushies, but definitely not buttons. So yeah, if you estimate selling the most of a certain item, feel free to bump that item up $1 to $5, depending on what it may be. Then you can maximize your profit that way. All right, so let's say you can't really see the example, but if your cash cow is prints, and you find out that your competition is selling their prints for like $12, maybe you should sell your prints for $15. $15 is still a pretty reasonable price for prints. And you could probably make that $3 extra per print. If you sold 20, that ends up being 60 extra bucks.
And it does bear mentioning that you will get some gripes over your prices. It happens, but you kind of need to learn how to either explain or otherwise rebuff those kind of little snark comments you may get from customers. Why would you charge X amount for that? Well, it's because I use better quality product, so I have to charge a little more. Or it might be a little more than some lesser quality products. And that usually satisfies. Either they'll walk away in a huff or they'll actually consider what you say. But it always bears, that shows that you have confidence in your work when you don't bow down to those sort of comments.
Yes, so in order to maximize your profit, you will have to consider your product mix. How much you might sell of prints, how much you might sell of your jewelry or buttons or plushies. And as a first-time vendor, that's going to be really hard to estimate. So numbers like that get better with each time. So just make sure you track it all. At your first convention, you sold X amount of prints, X amount of plushies, and go from there. All right. My example is best if you could read it. But basically, I had a lovely little example about you made $540 in cash. If your costs were $350, that means your profit is $190. So you basically use your metrics to figure out all these numbers, estimate them, and if you don't like your estimated profit, play with your pricing a little bit and see if you can reduce your costs in any way. And that is how you make money.
All right.
So now we'll move on to what vendor staffers actually look for. What does the person or people, when they see your application in front of them, consider before giving you the okay or the go home zay?
Okay, first things first, communication. Communicate early, communicate as soon as you can. It typically goes first come, first serve. However, the con can only hold so many vendors. So,
Actually, in this particular case, we don't do first come, first serve. We take a look at you as a pile, and then we start sorting you out. That's how we did it last year. That's how we do it. We'll probably do it next year.
right, thank you, John. Yes, that goes for anywhere you go. You do want to start as early as you can. But in this case, for BronyCon, you will be scrutinized from the get-go, and just because you did go early, that could help. But there are a few things that the vendor staff will look out for to make sure they're getting a quality vendor at their con. Remember, you represent the con as much as you represent yourself. So what do the vendors look for? They look for organized and easy to find info. We want to make sure we can find you. That's the first and foremost thing. If we can't find you, you don't exist. So be easy to find. Have a website. Have the most up-to-date information you can have available on Etsy, on DeviantArt, or any of the other popular sites. Like if you're an independent site, use the tips that our fellow panelists have given you about naming yourselves. Try to be easy to find, easy to look at. Oh yes, and if we find you on the street, business cards. Have your business cards at all times. We haven't stressed this enough. Business cards are your lifeblood.
Did you mention you should have business cards?
If you don't have them already, go out and make them as soon as this con is over. In fact, after this panel, go out to Kinko's and make them now.
Vistaprint is giving each of us $1,000 right now.
But seriously, that is one thing that from staff to vendor that looks really good, is the fact that you have business cards that shows you have achieved that business level, that we're ready to conduct our business. The next thing we're looking for, we want to know that the conventioners, the customers, they're getting out of it what they want. Stay relevant. This is a pony convention. We're trying to sell a product that is reaching an audience primarily of people who like ponies. Sure, we're a diverse group of fan nerds, but at the same time, this is a pony convention. This isn't an anime convention. You'll find anime things here, but this isn't the primary reason that you're here. So keep on target. In fact, I believe one of the vendors downstairs actually changes their appearance. They sell pony plushies, but when they're out at another anime convention, they'll change it to like more general items like plushies of other anime characters, plus ponies on the side.
Although crossovers are completely okay.
Yes, they are okay as long as you stay focused with the main product. That's something we look at, and we look like, okay, we know you're here for the right thing. Okay, the next thing we look for, stuff that represents the world, the unique crafts, the unique specialty work. Stay true to your own style. People like independent style. We want to make sure that you're not just like the ex-cookie cutter business out there that every Joe Schmo could sell. And these are like, if you're just like reselling things or objects, like stuff you'll find out on the street in Target. Sell your own stuff and make it look good. We like to, every convention, BronyCon likes to go for variety, so look for that. So here's how you can help yourself come across to the vendor staff as more approachable. You are representing a business. Be presentable as if you were going in for a job interview. You don't want to look all shoddy, gross, or anything. Represent a unique style that's classy, looks good, and it tells us that, hey, I'm ready to sell things to people, and I can conduct business by handling money responsibly. We don't want people to be feeling like they're going up to other vendors saying like, I don't know if I feel like doing business with him. We want people to be confident on both sides of the table. So put a good foot forward. This really helps. This is your business. The next thing, be friendly. There are people who have a stubborn streak or who need everything that they want the way they want it. That's okay. Just keep in mind you are dealing with human beings at the other side, on the staff. They want to cater to your every need, but you got to work with them. And they will try to provide it to you if you are on good terms. I mean, I guess you could be on bad terms, but don't expect complimentary service and like a 5-star inn. But yes, communication is very, very key. John, did you have something about that? You said you had a story.
2 weeks ago, I got an email reply from an email I sent out in April asking me about something that the deadline had passed a month ago. And I was like, you missed it, sorry. You have to call the state yourself. And I wind up having to call the state for them because they still didn't do it yesterday. So definitely read your emails. We send them out. Personally, I like to turn an email around in 24 hours. But if you have a question, ask it. I'd rather you ask me the same question 3 times than show up on the day without the paper I needed from you.
So that brings us to our final point. Be prepared. You are going into a con to sell things. We want to know you're prepared. So ask away, communicate with staff. There are many very basic things you might take for granted that you will need. Basic things like Wi-Fi, of all things. You can't always expect Wi-Fi to be there. You sometimes if you're, and then this, at BronyCon, what is the Wi-Fi policy?
You have to pay for it, and it's $150 for
Right.
3 days, and literally your phone can get better speed.
That's another cost that would go into
I have a list of-
your profits.
Yeah, I have a list of
calculation.
costs that will probably scare you, but
Yes.
trust me, everyone down there either paid it, or if you were in the lobby on Friday or Thursday, you probably saw them humping their bags across the lobby.
But you know, sometimes if you're a vendor and people pay in credit cards, you're going to use the Square app a lot. You're hardly ever going to find people with cash ready. So that Wi-Fi is a godsend. It costs money to pay, but hey, this is an expense that's actually provided usually by the building. The hotels, this can go across the board for any place you staff at. Make sure you are aware of their Wi-Fi policies. They cost money. They're not always free and complimentary.
And also, if you're lucky enough to get Signal and you can use Square or the PayPal widget, I know from experience and for a fact that PayPal charges the vendor and it will charge you at least a very small percentage off of your sales, so you have to take that into account when you're selling. And it's very tricky, because if you read the fine print, just as an example, you could have something as low as just a 2% charge, or something as high as a 4% charge with an additional 30 cents added on per transaction. So you have to be very careful with that sort of thing as well. It's why you may see vendors that are giving surcharges, for example, for the use of the little square or the PayPal, if they were not able to really work that into the price of their product.
It can hurt if you don't take it into account, but it is one of those serious costs, especially as we enter a very digital age. We are in the digital age. We just take for granted the paper money transaction. It just doesn't really exist as much anymore. So definitely be prepared for that. Be prepared for other basic things like food. I mean, that's not really a cost that we bear, but you do want to check ahead of time. Sometimes if you're in a hotel, or you might not be allowed food. Here, the hall is prepared to handle food. At other places, they might not allow food inside, so you might need to be able to take a quick break to walk outside, so take that into account. You also want to make sure you have the power available. Even here, I want to say they will have it available at all the booths, but you want to check ahead of time. You don't want to walk in and suddenly you find yourself needing to charge some iPad and you can't work it anymore because you ran out of power. You need to make sure you had that outlet. So and also make sure you let the vendor's staff know the partners you're working with. They don't want to know any surprise visitors because they need to take into account every head ahead of time. They can't just let any willy-nilly person walk behind the table. You need to make sure, like, that's high security area. The staff is very cautious and protective of their vendors because that's their lifeblood, that's their money. You don't want this to be exposed. So we must be very protective of who walks in and who walks out.
And that actually is a very good segue to our next point. So you've heard us blather on for almost 45 minutes about vending, if you're a first-time vendor. So let's say you've considered all that we have said and more, decided, yes, I can handle this and I'm going to do this. You put in your application, you're prepared, you're professional, the vendor staff likes what they see, and they say, hey, we want you at our convention to vend. Now what? So, logistics. Similar to what Andrew was saying, you need to take all of these things into account. You need to arrange a hotel if you can't travel from your home. You need to figure out a way to get there, get to the convention. Taxes for states that want to take your precious, precious monies, like Maryland. And there are many other things you need to figure out before vending here. Some other things are, making sure you have enough stock, making sure you know what kind of things to bring, and that sort of thing. And that goes into product preparation. That can be extremely difficult for first-time vendors. I could say from experience, the first time I vent at BronyCon, I had no idea what would sell. I really didn't. I hadn't done the metrics. I hadn't done any kind of analysis into it, and I just kind of drew whatever. And I used those numbers to help me the next time around. Marketing campaigns. Because you're new and no one knows you, get your name out there. Use Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you need to get your name out there and get a presence on the internet. Business cards.
Business cards.
Business cards.
Cha-ching!
Yes. And another thing you should do is hire or conscript a vendor staff.
Find people who owe you favors.
Or who love you very, very much. Hi, Mom. Next slide. Okay. All right. We've made it to question and answer time. So I'm just going to kind of let you either raise your hand or... I know we had a question earlier.
Both, actually. I know that a lot of people's strategies are to, say, take products in at their own desired prices for the first 2 days, and then have kind of a fire sale on the last afternoon to see if they can make a little extra cash at discounted prices. And it also factors into like we mentioned, personal experience as to, you know what will sell, and then you will take into account what that's sold for. And if a majority of people think that's reasonable, you can go ahead with that. And if not, you might want to rethink some things.
Right, when I was talking about adjusting the prices, it was prior to the convention. I think that if you're doing any kind of price adjusting during the convention, it should be downwards. But if you find that something didn't work very well for you, you didn't make enough money on your jewelry or what have you, that at the next convention, bump it up a little.
Got another
Question over here somewhere? That lady.
Young lady had her hand up first, and then
Yeah.
this gentleman.
Is it better to have like a Tumblr blog or a DeviantArt account, or to have your own website?
Everything.
Everywhere,
All of the
anywhere,
above.
all
All
you
of
can
the
put
above.
out there. And try to label, keep your branding consistent. Consistency is key.
And when you're filing your application, one website. This year, I had to personally go through 380 different applications. If you had no website, you were moved over to the other side because I didn't have time to go research you.
One of the best ways you can get the best of both worlds is to have a hub site of some kind. I know I used to use my Blogger account, and on my Blogger account, I'd have a little welcome, this is my stuff, here's links to everything. So either just have a web page with links to all your stuff. Really, that's all you really should do. Because there are some people that use DeviantArt that don't use Tumblr, vice versa, that don't use Twitter, that don't use Facebook. And if you want to really get yourself out there, you gotta be consistent and
Use
have
all
a
the
presence
social
on
medias.
everything.
Yes,
Now-
you have to take into account that some people will be, hashtag behind the times, like yours truly, and others will be, extremely tech savvy. I wear my Google Glass in the shower because I can.
Now, now, as far as DeviantArt, how many people have that? All right.
Good,
You
good.
sent me your link to DeviantArt, and I go to your thing, and it says you have 50 pages of art, and the first 3 pages are not ponies. I'm not looking anymore. So most people, they create a little directory, pony art. Give me that link. Then I can say, look, pony art. Yes,
Remember, stay relevant.
yes.
Yep.
You know,
It had the gentleman in the red shirt back there first. This isn't Star Trek, you're okay.
Inventory stockpile for your first time vending. I mean, would you recommend building up a lot before, or?
It's hard to say if you're going into it for the first time because you don't have any personal experience as to what you'll be able to sell reliably. I'd say in that case, you want to take a look at other people and see. I know a lot of people advertise by posting photos about, hey, look at all these prints I've got, or hey, look at all these plushies I've got. I'm going to be selling them, and see if they report afterwards that they really did well on one thing or the other. It may come down to people like their personal style, or it may just be something that's more general. And you'll want to focus in on those in order to build up your stock for going forward.
Another thing that you can try is set a number that you're willing to take a loss on. Set a number like $100 that okay, I can afford to spend $100 on my merchandise and I'll be absolutely okay if not a single thing sold. Go in with that, and if you sell out in the first day, well then either you put stuff too cheap, or hey, people really like my stuff, maybe I need to get more next time.
speaking of that, last year we had at least a third sell out the first day. Now, back to what you were asking about bringing a lot. If you were to show up with a car, like today or yesterday, and you didn't have a bunch of friends, you had 2 choices. You were going to make 50 trips through the lobby or pay the union $80 to pull into the building and they would unload you. If you didn't account for the $80 cost, you were parking out on Charles Street and humping it in. So that's another cost you'll have to think about, because the unions run the building, and if you wanted to drive in and get unloaded, $80.
If you want an extra chair at your table, it's an extra $50.
And
we
up.
found that out. You can actually.
You can bring your own chairs, your own tables, but same thing goes. If you don't carry it through the lobby, you have to pay the union to move it.
Okay. I think this gentleman up here was next.
Okay, so Comic-Con, they have a specific, like, seller's permit, the California state seller's permit. Do
We
you-
can't really speak to Comic-Con.
Well,
Actually, none of us have vended there.
Are you
or know
asking
there's-
about the sales permits?
I'm asking if you have to have one here in
Yes,
the
you
state.
do.
Yes.
I,
there-
I had to process 294 of them.
Yes. For BronyCon specifically, you need two main documents. There are an exhibitor's affidavit and a Maryland sales tax license, so that you have permission to actually sell there, and then you have the proper paperwork to pay Maryland its cut for being able to sell here.
Yes.
All right.
Next.
It bears in mind we're running out of time, so we're going to get to as many questions as we can. However, we will be available after the panel in the general area if you do have some really burning questions you need to ask and we run out of time. So next question I think was over here. There, anywhere. We'll be.
Not like I'm going to take your artwork and slap it on a T-shirt, but like, what if I want to put Pinkie Pie on a shirt, but it doesn't say Hasbro or My Little Pony?
Well, I
how
can
does
tell you about
work?
that. I have a team whose job it is to walk the halls while you're loading in and looking for that. If it's been drawn by you by hand, no problem. You see certain vendors actually selling products. They are licensed to do that. If you don't have a license, if you went to Walmart and loaded up the car, because we know who the licensed resellers are, because they have to tell us they're licensed. We have to check it. So that would be your answer on that.
Okay, gentleman in the melty hair shirt.
Artists are concerned in the merchant alley instead of just those who are there, like licensed vendors?
Well-
Like, what's your criteria?
Well, personally, I'm numbers. I don't know art. I'll admit it. But we have a team, we have a whole staff, and basically, once you get past the, did you have a website? At least 4 or 5 other people review the list, and they say, is it adult themed? Adult theme, you will not get in. So if you've got your deviant art that's bad, hide it from me. You know, if you want to sell that stuff out of this building, not a problem. I mean, we have several artists that we know are great at the bad arts, but they know not to bring it here. So, yes. Next question. Hem.
How do you actually get a license to sell things?
That's easy. Once you get approved, I would send you an email, ask for the information, and then I send it to the state. That guy. Yes. Yes. Yes, if you see people selling Hasbro down there, it's because they've made arrangements directly with Hasbro. Yes.
All right. And this young lady?
What are your thoughts on bartering with customers on prices?
That's a personal choice.
No. It's my personal philosophy.
I mildly dislike it.
My personal philosophy is that I am not standing in front of a Corolla trying to hawk it. I'm standing behind something that I made myself by hand, and I have every right to say that this is worth this, in my opinion. And if that is not your opinion, you can move on.
Yeah, and I mean, and once again, it goes back to the confidence in your product. It goes back to what you personally are willing to do. Me personally, I'm not willing to haggle, especially on Slash Prices Sunday. No way. I am, however, willing to work with some. I remember last year, this guy was out of money. He desperately wanted a button. You know, he was a couple dollars short. He's like, wait, I'm going to go to the ATM. He went to all the ATMs. They were all out. I'm going to go to the bank. He went to the bank. They were all out for some reason. And he's just so upset. I mean, he could have been selling me a line of stuff, but I saw this guy was putting forth effort to try to pay full price for a button, which was $5 because it's one of those big ones. So I said, look, give me what you have, do me a favor, wear the button, tell everybody you meet where you got the button, and we'll be square. Exactly. 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Some more questions?
Say that despite being on every social media site ever, and you are active on it, but you don't have a following at all, would you still say it's okay to vend despite the fact no one's going to know you off the bat?
I have a grand total of 8 followers on Twitter, so I would say yes.
It goes back.
It goes back to, not everybody uses every form of social media. It's good to have coverage in a variety of forms of, self-advertisement.
Also, vending and giving out your business card is a great way for them to start following you on these
Yes.
social media websites.
And I mean, we're not trying to say that if you don't have a following and if you're a no name that you have no business vending. The only people we would say have no business vending are people that are going to be emotionally hurt if they don't succeed in the way they feel they should. Really, you need to succeed with yourself first and have the confidence to say,
Yeah.
I don't sell anything, it's their loss.
Yeah, I went into Summer BronyCon 2012 with, practically nobody knowing me, and I only started making a profit on my stuff the 3rd time around. So that gives you an idea.
Yeah.
Say you're new to vendoring and you do wanna hook up with a booth, but you're not sure who to approach. How do you go about looking for someone to share a booth with?
We have a story.
Oh, tell us the story.
It is the story of hearts and hooves, which we'll tell very quickly because we're running out of time. You go first.
Okay, so as I said, I was marginally successful my first time around. I was in the red, and then I decided to start applying for vending at a more local convention, Cloudsdale Congress, and during that time, representing. And during that time, I put out a open call on the DC Bronies meetup page as to say, hey, does anybody want to share a table with me? Because I learned the hard way the first time that you really shouldn't go into things alone. And so what happened was that this young woman right here got in contact with me, and we wound up meeting each other at a meetup early that year. And we vended together, and we have been together in multiple meetings ever since.
Last question.
Last question.
Confused about the copyright question. In art school, you're told not to use any kind of images that really are appropriated. I know recently a big name artist actually got sued by, I forget what company, for basically using a Pokemon image within his painting, even though he hand painted it. So I'm not entirely sure how that works here.
Well, as far as we're concerned, we walk around, as long as you didn't photocopy it off the, off of the website or something, if you just drew it yourself, because you'll see a lot of them look really good, but they drew them themselves. That's what matters.
Yeah.
If we can clearly look at that and say, that was a screenshot, no.
Yeah, that's
that
the
would
big
get you.
difference, is that an appropriated image is an image that is copyrighted directly from Hasbro. So as it was said,
Yes.
if you took a copyrighted licensed image, like one of the stock images you see on like Pony Toys all the time, and tried to sell that as your own artwork, that is where you would not do that, and you could get into a lot of trouble. But if you hand draw it yourself, if you put your own spin on it, and you don't take that copyrighted image and try to hawk that, then you're fine. All right, I think that is our last question. I think we are out of time.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you
attending.
very much.
Thank you.
If you have additional questions and would like to speak with us, we will be outside and hope to see you there.
Yes.